two dicks. Wow.
Yeah! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast.
And having to go, yeah, but he did kind of do this.
What I'm hearing is you just want Tom Brady dead. Like that's all I'm hearing at this point. You just want Brady dead.
Well, not anymore. He's retired now, so I'm good with that. I don't want him calling games anymore because holy hell, he's hard to listen to.
Enough angry and, depressing from myself. Sterling, thank you for being able to sit there as my therapist for this episode.
Start the game already!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast. Brendan and Sterling coming at you after a little bit of a hiatus, not necessarily fully planned for some of the situations, but we are back, and there is a little bit of news that we are going to talk about. Obviously, back on Monday, there was a certain trade that happened from one of our teams. We will talk about that here shortly, but Sterling, my friend, how you doing today?
Doing good. Like you said, it was a couple weeks where, the weekends rolled around and just, life happens. And so that's when we do our recordings typically, because we both work Monday, Friday for the most part. And so it's hard to do during the week recording. So it just so happened to be we weren't available. Luckily, it was during the off season here, so we didn't miss any, game predictions or anything like that. So yeah, it's good to be back. And luckily, we had some exciting news that kind of shocked the league, because you don't often see trades get done on June 30th, 2 weeks before training camp starts. At this point, typically teams are waiting till after training camp into preseason before any trades get done. So it was an interesting thing to see. It gave us some NFL news at the end of June.
Yeah, and whenever you do see a trade at this point of the year, it's really for like an insignificant type player where it's just like, oh, I'm going to give this team this player for like a 7th round pick. Like, yeah. It's never normally something that you see ESPN pop in going, breaking news, blockbuster trade. And yeah. I would say even saying blockbuster trade might even be a little bit of a stretch in this point, but what the trade was the Pittsburgh Steelers traded for Jalen Ramsey and tight end Jonnu Smith, while also getting a 7th round pick in the 2027 draft from the Miami Dolphins, and they in exchange sent back safety Minkah Fitzpatrick and a 2027 5th round pick. And I think both of us kind of had very similar reactions, if not similar, relatively close reactions to this, where it was kind of like the, huh?
I mean, it was kind of like the but at the same time, I wasn't surprised. I was surprised with the addition of Minkah Fitzpatrick, but like we all knew, it's been talked about since last season, Arthur Smith wanting to acquire Jonnu Smith. It's been a point of discussion for well over a year. So I was expecting at some point, since Omar Khan's been talking so much about getting another pass catcher, not specifically saying a wide receiver, I'm thinking, okay, they're working with the Dolphins to try and get Jonnu Smith. And so I wasn't as shocked there. The two other additions were a little more surprising. The Jalen Ramsey, Minkah Fitzpatrick swap was a little shocking. But then when you really dive into it a little more, it starts to make a bit more sense. On face value, it's a surprise. But once you look into it, it's like, okay, Jalen Ramsey said he wanted out of Miami. We knew that.
Yep.
They've been looking for a trade partner, couldn't find one. So it almost feels like the Dolphins were like, we'll give you Jonnu Smith, but you kind of got to take this guy too. And he is an all-pro, so we need something significant back.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's where it lands to Minkah Fitzpatrick, because he's got this season, next season left on this deal. I think everybody was pretty sure the Steelers weren't going to be re-signing him. The safety market has died significantly in the last 2 seasons. We saw it last year, where a quarter of the teams just straight up cut their safeties to get them off the roster and out of the books for the prices that they were being paid. It's not a high valued position anymore. We see more teams going to that sort of dime defense where it's a single safety back and you've got an extra slot corner in there that can do both, which again, bringing Jalen Ramsey in sort of fits that. And it sounds like that's what Pittsburgh plans to use Ramsey for, is a sort of slot cornerback who also will be dropping back into that safety role when needed.
Yeah, I think the reason why I was shocked by this trade was the way that it was also initially reported on, where it was the Pittsburgh Steelers acquired Jalen Ramsey from the Miami Dolphins, and everyone's like, "Whoa, okay, sure." Like, what did they give up? Adding Jalen Ramsey to that room, you already brought in Darius Slay this offseason. You had Joey Porter Jr., who is a good young corner in this league, and everyone's looking at this going like, "Okay, I guess they're really bolstering this defense." And then the next report was, "Oh, the Steelers are also getting Jonnu Smith," and you're like, okay, you're getting another pass catcher at the tight end spot. Little bit of an interesting one. Again, Arthur Smith had been basically begging for this trade ever since he became a Pittsburgh Steeler, it seems like.
Yep.
But and then it added Minkah Fitzpatrick, where I just kind of sat back and went, like, I'm taking myself out of the Jonnu Smith equation here. And I'm just looking at it going, you're taking a 28-year-old safety who has been the staple of your secondary ever since being traded from Miami after his rookie season, essentially. And you're now getting Jalen Ramsey, who is still a premier corner in this league, but he's older, and you also gave him a pay rise as well. And it felt a little weird to me that swap was made. While I looked at the secondary for the Steelers and went, they don't necessarily need to add Ramsey. It's a good move to get Jalen Ramsey, don't get me wrong, but to give him that pay bump while also trading away Minkah Fitzpatrick, it was kind of like you're kind of just doing same, swap, same.
Yeah, and I agree. It's a bit of a sidestep, but it does afford them the ability to play that dime defense a little bit more, because you don't need the two safeties that way. We still have Deshaun Elliott that can play that free safety back there and just cover all. And cornerback has been the issue for this Steelers defense over the last probably 5 or 6 years.
Yep.
And now looking at it, like, you look around the league and you go, the Pittsburgh Steelers might have the most stacked cornerback room now in the league outside of maybe the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah,
And so that and with the division, like, you look at what you're going up against. Like, they now look at it and go, all right, where are you going to throw the ball, Joe Burrow? Enjoy throwing it to Mike Gesicki 20 times a game, because you're going to have Joey Porter Jr. shutting down T. Higgins, and Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay likely double teaming Jamar Chase. And so it's going to really limit what the Bengals can do. It really felt like that's what this was to negate what the Bengals can do and try to avoid another shootout with the Bengals like we saw last season.
Yeah, and then obviously the other question to this trade was obviously Jonnu Smith. And I kind of looked at that one and went, I don't really understand that one, because you already have a pretty decent pass catching tight end in Pat Freiermuth. It's not like Arthur Smith is known for using multiple tight end sets where both tight ends are utilized. Now,
we're both are utilized. I agree.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, we know Arthur Smith likes to use two tight ends, but he also typically likes to use the premier tight end as a decoy for the less talented tight end. And you could have looked at that and went, well, you could just do that with the tight ends that were currently on the roster, because we saw an increase in what we saw from I forget your second tight end's name here at the moment.
Connor Hayward and Darnell Washington. So we've got
I was
four
thinking
tight ends on the
Darnell
roster.
Washington more, but yeah. It's one of those things where I also kind of look at this and go, yeah, he's been with Arthur Smith for 3 years of his career, 2 years in Tennessee and 1 year in Atlanta.
Mhm.
The only good year Jonnu Smith has really had was last year in Miami, and I just kind of sit back and I go, it feels a little bit more like a gamble to me that you're banking on him still trying to get that same level of production. I'm always really iffy on guys that just have one good year that people are banking on, particularly in the skill position. Know what I
Yeah,
mean?
this is 100% a gamble. And it's also a safety net for Mike Tomlin. This is uh, they went this year. They got Arthur Smith everything he said he wants, and I think this is an all-in moment where they go, "Okay, Arthur, do what you say you can do, or you're there's the door." And I think that's what it is. This is going to be the scapegoat move where if this season doesn't work out, they're going to go, well, it wasn't Mike Tomlin, it was Arthur Smith. We gave him all the tools he asked for. That we gave him DK Metcalf. We gave him veteran Aaron Rodgers. We drafted a running back that is sort of a young Derrick Henry-esque style, that pounder. And then we went and got Jonnu Smith for him. So this is everything he said he needed to operate this offense. Um, as far as two tight ends, yeah, he often hasn't used two skill tight ends, but that's not to say he doesn't use two a lot, because the Steelers were, I think, sixth or seventh in the league in 12 personnel last season. I expect them to be top three this season with this move. They are going to be a team that uses 12 personnel a lot. And we know Arthur Smith likes to use motion in his offense as well. And so what I saw when I saw this trade is I see two tight ends lining up, and I see Pat Freiermuth going to motion into the slot. I think we're going to see that a lot because we saw Pat Freiermuth do much better a little bit farther down the field than short yardage, whereas Jonnu Smith is much more of a short yardage kind of guy. And so I think that's the split that they're looking to do. At least if it was me calling the plays, that's what I would be looking at. I'm like, this is what we already do. Let's just make this slight adjustment where Pat Freiermuth is now going motion. And also, like you said, he likes using one skill guy for decoy, and then the other one gets the pass. And it's like, okay, now you got two skill guys. It didn't work out so well with Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith, but as we've seen, Kyle Pitts kind of has been a bust. And so maybe he just wasn't as good as everybody anticipated. Maybe with Pat Freiermuth, we see a different trajectory. I'm trying to see the positive and the optimist in it
Yeah.
because, Jonnu Smith was the number 3 tight end last season. The only two tight ends that were better than him were Trey McBride and Brock Bowers.
Yep.
He had more yards, more touchdowns than Travis Kelce and Sam Laporta and TJ Hawkinson, all the other big names that we know in the league right now. And so, yes, it was a one-off. He did come close to that his 1 year in Tennessee as well, but last year was a career year for Jonnu Smith. So I think that's all it is. They're trying to bank on, hey, maybe we can keep that momentum going. He already knows Arthur Smith and what he likes to do, so it's not like it's going to be a large learning curve of how are we going to do this. And we know Aaron Rodgers likes to use tight ends as well, and so this could bode well. Like I said, it didn't shock me them getting Jonnu Smith. We knew they needed somebody else that could catch passes. We were all thinking wide receiver because that's the logical option to go. But now this sort of leaves the window open for them to not have to go get a superstar wide receiver to fill that role, because you've got Jonnu Smith, who's going to probably net 600 to 900 yards. You really needed another receiver that was going to be able to get you about 1,200 yards. This knocks off, say 700 or 800 of that. You can go get a guy like, say, Tyler Boyd, who's going to get you 500 yards in a season. And so that really gives them this window where they don't have to go for a superstar now, an Amari Cooper or a Gabe Davis. They don't have to gamble and overpay. And if Roman Wilson continues to perform well once we get to training camp, they might not even have to do that. They might be able to roll with the guy they drafted in the 3rd round last year for this purpose.
Yeah, it's this move. When I first saw the trade, it immediately screamed out to me, along with all of the other moves that the Steelers have made this offseason. It's Super Bowl or bust.
It is.
And I think you and I are kind of in this same boat of going, man, it's Super Bowl or bust, but it's I I will say it's 99% likely that it's bust because
Mhm.
you just look at the teams that you're going to have to go through. That AFC North division, we do like to make fun of the Browns, but just 2 years ago, they were one of the hottest teams out there when they had 5 different quarterbacks, and then they eventually brought in Joe Flacco for him to be the comeback player of the year, and they brought
Mhm.
him back. He knows the offense, he knows the system. The defense got stronger on that team. We make fun of the Browns for being the Browns, but that's still a competitive roster, and anything can happen. And then you talk about playoffs. Are the Steelers capable of beating the Bills? Are they capable of beating the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Chargers, or even potentially the Broncos in the playoffs at this point? And so it, you and I have talked about it so much where it's been, we feel like they've just been kind of going down the same route of trying to hold on that little bit more. And I
Mhm.
honestly feel like this move, it just guarantees them that middle of the pack first round exit that we've seen, and it's just going to delay the inevitable where it's you need to go into this rebuild. And of course, throughout all of this conversation after this trade this week, the biggest talking point was, are the Steelers going to trade TJ Watt? And my first thought was, with trading away Minkah Fitzpatrick, why would anyone think it makes sense for the Steelers to now all of a sudden trade TJ Watt?
Right? Yeah.
Because
Honestly, that just feels like make news sort of articles. Those ones, like, yeah, they haven't got a deal done, but I don't see them trading him unless it's at the trade deadline and they've started like 1-6.
yeah, but again, you and I have said it where it's been the Steelers probably should have traded TJ Watt at the beginning of the offseason and
Yep.
said, this is the path that we're going down because
Yep.
it's putting us in a direction, as opposed to
Well,
now where you could very easily just lose TJ Watt for nothing.
yep. Oh, 100%. I don't see that happening. I think they will franchise tag him and then trade him if that's what it comes to.
Yeah.
I don't see you letting TJ Watt walk away, but I mean, it's tough because yeah, like we said, it's this team every year lately. It's retool, it's retool, it's retool. It doesn't work. It works one time in every 20 years for a team to retool instead of doing a true rebuild.
Yep.
And it feels like this is the last ditch effort where they've just, shoved Aaron Rodgers through the window to stop that Super Bowl window from closing, and it's just slamming on his head trying to close, and they're like, come on, get through, Aaron. And that's what it sort of feels like. So yeah, I mean, this I said it to you. I fully expect a 9-8 season and probably a wild card exit. But with what this defense still looks like, with an Aaron Rodgers who still put stats up last year, it's going to be really fun watching 9 of those 18 games this season. And so at least I'm going to get 9 fun games to watch at some point. It just won't happen in January.
Yeah. It's gonna be that situation of where we have it at every point in the year, at the start of November, where
Mhm.
we sit down and have the conversation of, are the Steelers legit this year?
I mean, luckily this year we're going to get that earlier because I also mentioned to you this week, like last year, it was
It
that
was
whole
that three
Christmas
game
window where we
stretch.
had those tough games. So we didn't really know until the end of the season what that Steelers team was. And as soon as those games rolled around, I went, they're done. Like
Yep.
they're not good enough. And they showed that in the playoffs. They got blown out by the Ravens. This year it's earlier. It's weeks, I think 6 to 13 is that real true gauntlet. It opens with the Bengals and I believe it closes with the Bills. And we've got the Bengals twice in there. We've got the Bills. We've got the Bears. Um, I believe we play the Ravens once, but there's a lot of big games in that stretch, as well as some mediocre games. Because that's the thing with the Steelers is sometimes they'll beat the good teams, but then get blown out by a team like the Colts, who are also in that window. And it's like, okay, how do you perform against a variety that includes the best of the best in the Bengals and the Bills and an upcoming Bears team that is on the rise right now? And so those games for me, will determine whether this Steelers team is good enough to make a playoff push or if it's just going to be 9-8, one and done.
Yeah, it's again, we have talked about this. We have beaten this dead horse to the point where it's pretty much, it's not even like bones. Like the bones are now powder, and we're literally
Right?
just beating the earth at this point.
Yeah.
Because
I
again,
mean,
we've had this conversation for the last 3 years, pretty much since we started this podcast. It has
yep.
essentially been, when are the
Just
Steelers going to rebuild? And you talked about it a little bit earlier, where it feels like everything is being set up to say to Arthur Smith, hey, listen here, buddy, we
yep.
gave you everything, and we're going to sit back and say, like, I'm gonna have to sit back and say at the end of the year, when are we finally gonna start to put the blame on Mike Tomlin?
Yes. Yeah, and that's just it. That's what I was saying. Like it feels like they've got their scapegoat now, so they can avoid blaming Mike Tomlin again. Because if it doesn't work, then Arthur Smith's out and it's another offensive coordinator in. But looking at the moves they've done this offseason, it's interesting to me because I look at it and I go, they've kind of put the pieces in place to have a jump-started rebuild already going. They have one of the best young offensive lines in the game. They drafted Will Howard, which they seem keen on if he can develop into a quarterback. And we've seen 5th, 6th, 7th rounders become mainstay starting quarterbacks in this league. So it's not outside the realm of possibility. And so they've got the groundwork for a rebuild if it doesn't work this year. What I feel like needs to happen is if it doesn't work out and they go another offensive coordinator, they really need to find the guy that they can look at it and go, you're good enough that we know you're going to get hired away as a head coach, but no, you're not. You're going to be the OC and you're going to be hired as our head coach to succeed Mike Tomlin is what's going to happen. That really feels like the trajectory they're trying to put themselves on. Like everything has to align perfectly for them for it to happen, but that's pretty common in professional sports that you have a plan, but you need the stars to align for it to actually work out. And so at least they've set themselves up in a position where they're like, we've got a maybe quarterback of the future, a great offensive line, and some defensive pieces that are worth some money that we can trade away for more draft capital and build. And so it's something that could work out for the Steelers in the long run if it doesn't work out in the short term. And hey, who knows? Maybe they do perform well this year and they've still got those pieces to be able to do a rebuild. So I think this offseason overall, now that we're nearing the end of it, has been a win for the Steelers. They've said we're going for a Super Bowl now, but they drafted for the future as well. And so it was promising. I like that trade that happened overall. The defense got a little bit worse because I do think Jalen Ramsey is not as good as Minkah Fitzpatrick, but the offense got a little bit better. And that's really what this team needs. We see it. The teams that spend on offense are the ones that win championships now. The Steelers are still the highest paid defense in the league. They need to start shifting away from that. And I think the reason they gave Jalen Ramsey that bit of a pay rise was to pull some of that money off the later seasons, the books, because he's still got 3 years left on his deal. So you also have Jalen Ramsey for that extra year on top of what you would have had Minkah Fitzpatrick for.
Yeah, it's we say this so much. We're just gonna have to kind of wait and see with a lot of this stuff because it really is just such an unknown with some of these things. But yeah, after that was pretty much the big highlight news of pretty much the last 2 weeks. Because again, we're kind of in this 5-week dead period of the NFL where it's basically the summer break before training camp. But yeah, moving into the new segment that we started a few weeks ago, calling it This and That. Essentially, where both of us come up with a couple of questions, either this or that type scenarios, and we kind of go back and forth and ask each other these and allow the other to kind of be the expert opinion on this. So, Sterling, I think I will ask you one to start with this right away.
Okay.
And it revolves around the actual trade that we saw is who is going to play better for their new team? Is it going to be Jalen Ramsey or Minkah Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, I mean, that's Gonna be an interesting one. I mentioned I had a question I need to pose to you for this. Um, is it Minkah Fitzpatrick playing for the Dolphins stats that we're looking at? Because if I'm being honest, I looked at this trade. I don't think Minkah Fitzpatrick actually ends up playing for Miami. I think they flip him and they move him elsewhere.
Well, I
And so
think
is it
it's
just
just
wherever he plays, is he going to have a better season?
I think so. I haven't
Yeah.
heard any rumors that Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to be on the move this year. So I would
No.
say mostly for the Miami Dolphins, but then again, we did know that he got traded away from Miami all those years ago. I think that had a lot to do with Brian Flores during that time because Brian Flores was also, trying to be a dictator for that potential team. But I will say Miami because I truly do believe he isn't going to be traded from Miami.
Okay. Well, either way, I guess it doesn't really matter. Like I think Fitzpatrick will have the better season over Ramsey next year, no matter where he plays. I don't think he'll play for Miami. I think they will trade him, but that doesn't really matter. I think no matter where he ends up, he will perform better than Jalen Ramsey. I mean, purely for the fact that Minkah is going to be a starter and play every down. Jalen Ramsey is kind of sharing the number 2, number 3 cornerback role in Pittsburgh. He's going to be playing more of that slot. He will be versatile in being used as a slot corner and as a safety, so we will see him. But he's lost a bit of a step, and so I do expect him to have a bit of struggles. But I think both are going to have great seasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so first one I will pose to you, this or that, revolves around somebody that we both know and love, Aaron Rodgers. So will Aaron Rodgers pass for 4,000 yards this season, or will he make it to the Super Bowl?
I'd like option C of neither, but that's
That's
not
why
the
I
way.
threw this one at you, because I
Yeah.
knew you wouldn't be, you'd hate it.
Well, here's the thing is that I don't think the Steelers are making the Super Bowl. I think I've made that very, very
Yeah.
clear. I think even with Aaron Rodgers there, I think Arthur Smith and all this, I think it is way more likely that he's going to pass for 4,000 yards, even with all of the shenanigans and shit that just went on with the Jets last year. He was, what, like 200 or 300 yards away from having that. And if he has just
Yeah.
a little bit more stability in this season, yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Aaron Rodgers gets 4,000 yards. Like, again, this is still Aaron Rodgers we're talking about here. And
Mhm.
you and I yesterday, when we were just texting back and forth, it was I sitting back going like, I think you might hate Aaron Rodgers more than me. Now, I had to watch him dismantle my team time and time again, and we both kind of eventually just settled on we don't like Aaron Rodgers mostly because of his personality and what
Yeah.
he does off the field. But I think both of us have a high level of respect for what he does on the field. And like
Mhm.
I said this for years as a Bears fan. And when people said, "Oh, I hate Aaron Rodgers," I would never have him on the Bears. I'd go, "You want to know the amount of dirty things I would have done to have prime Aaron Rodgers on the Chicago Bears? Like, are
Yeah.
you kidding me?"
That's the key, though. Prime Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron
Yes.
Rodgers had come to Pittsburgh 5 years ago, I would have been so excited. So
Yeah,
excited.
totally.
Now it's just like, okay, like, I keep seeing the freaking memes of him in his Steelers jersey. And I'm like, he just looks like a fucking 40-year-old fan of a football team. That's all he looks like.
He looks like what this was one of the really funny ones that I saw. He looks like the model for like a jersey that you go at like a costume store where it's
Yeah,
like, oh, this
for
is
Halloween.
yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was really funny. But yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers passing for 4,000 yards is vastly more likely than the Steelers going to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Next one for yourself is who is Shador Sanders going to play more games for this season? Is it going to be the Toronto Argonauts of the CFL or the Cleveland Browns of the NFL? The reason I ask this is because a lot of talk this week has been about the player negotiations that CFL teams have the rights for. And Shador Sanders came up on the Toronto Argonauts.
Yep. And I mean, I've said it at length that I don't think Shador Sanders is going to play for the Cleveland Browns this year because you look at the roster and you go, Joe Flacco's the clear starter at this point.
Yep.
You know, I've heard a lot of rumors that if Joe Flacco doesn't work out, then Kenny Pickett is their clear number 2, which is crazy to me because he's underperformed even compared to Shedeur Sanders. But if I had to choose between the 2 rookies, I would probably roll with Dylan Gabriel before Shedeur Sanders as well, just because he seems a little bit more poised and collected and a little bit less of a scramble panic kind of quarterback. And so for that reason, I don't know if he'll play games for either of these teams. I think it's more likely he plays a game for Toronto than he plays a game for Cleveland.
Yeah, I was kind of sitting in that similar boat as well, where when I first saw it, I kind of laughed and went, that's not going to happen. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
This isn't entirely insane.
Yeah, I know, right? And I was surprised to see you include a CFL team because I know you're not a fan of the CFL. So that shocked me a bit. I like that. I like that.
You got to pay me. If you pay me, I'll care about it.
Yeah, my next one for you is I picked 2 rookie quarterbacks. Which of these rookie QBs will be more likely to start behind their veteran mentors that they have? Both of them have significant veterans playing ahead of them on the depth chart. We know they won't start the season. Who's going to start first, taking over the role from that veteran mentor? Will it be Jackson Dart with the New York Giants taking over from Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston? Or will it be Will Howard taking over the quarterback role from Aaron Rodgers?
I think you also have to throw Mason Rudolph in that as well, because I still think Mason Rudolph is ahead of Will Howard on the depth chart.
I do too, but he's also not a rookie.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about like just the mentors that are ahead of him. I think
yeah. No, I see what you're saying. Yeah, but yeah,
I think Jackson Dart, again, we have to look at where each of these guys were drafted. Jackson Dart was the 24th pick in the draft, and Will Howard was a 6th round pick. Mm-hmm. And when you look at it and go, both guys technically have 2 veterans that are ahead of them. Jackson Dart has both Russell Wilson and then Jameis Winston ahead of him. And then obviously Will Howard has Aaron Rodgers and then Mason Rudolph. Mm-hmm. I think it's more likely to talk about if we're looking at a situation of just one of these veterans, like let's say both Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson get hurt and they have to go to their backup quarterbacks. It's more likely that the Giants will hand over the reins to Jackson Dart, their 1st round pick rookie, as opposed to the Steelers looking at Mason Rudolph going, hey, you're playing bad, we're going to give it to the 6th round rookie. I think Mike Tomlin will just say, you know what, we're going to stick with Mason Rudolph for the rest of the year and just kind of happen sakes where it happens, where the Giants, again, they have a lot of pressure on them. Like, Dable has a situation of where his seat is basically on fire right now. And so even if it isn't injuries or necessarily bad play, the Giants aren't winning. I could see Jackson Dart getting that start earlier.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I laugh because we've seen Mike Tomlin do crazy things before.
Yes,
we saw last year where we were all like, why is Justin Fields not staying the starter? Yep. He's done so well. What are you doing? You know, and it wouldn't shock me to see him, you know, week 13 or something, just be like, Aaron Rodgers is hurt. Mason Rudolph hasn't won us a game yet. Get in there, Will.
Yep.
Right. I thought that was an interesting one.
Crazy things.
Right. And I went through like all the rookie quarterbacks. I'm like, okay, some of these are already projected to be starters, like Cam Ward, Tyler Shuck. You know, it's like they're in full-on battles for the starter role. And then there's others that, like Jalen Milroe, where it's like, unless there's an injury, there's no chance he's starting.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's why I settled on those 2 particular quarterbacks, because I look at both those quarterbacks and both those teams, and they're both in that more desperation spot where I could see them gambling on a rookie QB.
Yes. And that is that for this or that this week. And now moving forward to a thing that we have been teasing for what feels like almost a month and a half, maybe even 2 months at this point, where we've been
I
talking
know
about.
that's the tough thing with that hiatus we had of that 2 weeks is had we had a chance to record it ahead of time like we wanted to, but we're too busy to be able to, we would have had content to put out there for you guys. And so that's
Yes.
the tough thing. It was like, damn, too bad we didn't find a chance to do this earlier.
Yeah, it was just unfortunate circumstances, but we are finally going over our all division teams. We had been talking about this for a while now. This is one of those things where we kind of just sat back and went, we often hear about like the all century team or all conference team or just all NFL, and we kind of
Mhm.
just sat back and went, what would an all conference team look like? And like which team would theoretically be the best out of all 8 of the divisions? And so we ended up spending probably about 2 hours going over all of the
Mhm.
divisions. And again, there are teams that have players on it where you go, oh man, like I can't believe you guys didn't include this guy. It's like, well, he was the second best option at this particular spot. And so there's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of guys that are not included on this list that are really, really elite players. It's just simply because their division is really stacked at that position or this, that, or
Oh,
the other thing.
exactly. And I mean, this may be something we do more of in the future where we do, all division or all conference, historical teams, things like that. What we did for this one was it is all division teams. So each division with, with the best players currently active,
Yes.
sort of based on how they performed last year or over the last couple of seasons. So we have not included any of the rookies that were just drafted this year, despite the fact, some of them we looked at and we're like, for example, Ashton Genty, we looked at him and we were like, we possibly could include him in this because of what the running backs in the AFC West look like, but we opted to leave out any current rookies that just got drafted until we see their performance. So
Yep.
if we do this again down the road, you may see somebody like that. I don't know if we'll do exactly like this again. It'll likely be some sort of alteration, some sort of, century team, something like that if we decide to do more of this. But this was a fun little project that we wanted to try out and see which division sort of has the most stacked roster across the league.
And maybe when Madden 26 eventually comes out, we build all these teams and put them in kind of like a head to head fight and see which
Yep.
ultimately comes out on top. But that will be a future thing for sure. But kicking things off with the AFC West. And I think both of us kind of looked at the AFC West and went, this is a division that we particularly like, but it isn't as stacked as you might necessarily think. And we should state this the way that we did this for the offense, we have every offensive position listed out. So we have quarterback, running back, we have 2 wide receivers, we have a tight end spot, then we also have a flex spot for either a wide receiver or a tight end, just simply because there are some divisions where there are more tight ends that are simply just better than some of the quality wide receivers, and vice versa with the wide receivers. We also did that on the defensive side of the ball as well, where we had either 2 corners or 3 linebackers, or 3 corners and 2 linebackers, just because, again, you often see like a nickel be substituted for a outside linebacker, and so we kind of went along that way. We also added kicker and punter. We didn't include the long snapper because I think neither of us know who the long snapper is on our team. I think it's Scott Daly for the Bears. But yeah, so we are going to start with the offense first. And obviously in the AFC West, we're kicking things off with the O-line first, going in the interior with center. It's pretty simple. It's Creed Humphrey. He's
Yeah.
one of the 3 best centers in the entire NFL. With Jason Kelsey retiring last season, I think most people probably would have classified Creed Humphrey as the best center in the NFL, and so that was an easy decision.
Yeah. Next up, we have sticking with the interior. We have the offensive guard, Mekhi Becton from the LA Chargers, who has been a mainstay as a guard around the league with several teams over the last few years, and he is a just high quality interior guard, great at pass blocking, great at opening up holes. He could not be left off this.
Yeah, Mekhi Becton was a tackle for the Jets when he started his career, goes over to Philly as a backup tackle, gets slotted in at that guard spot and plays unbelievable, and then signs a nice deal with the Chargers. The other guard that we have on this list is Trey Smith, one of the very best guards in all of football. It's not really a shocker here that Trey Smith ends up landing on this list.
Yep. And then moving to the outside, we have our first tackle is Joe Alt with the LA Chargers, a rookie draft from last season who lived up to expectations. He was a phenomenal tackle in his first year. He kept, why am I forgetting the
Justin
quarterback's
Herbert.
name? Yeah, he kept Justin Herbert alive last year and did a great job. That's what they brought him in for. And honestly, I just see him climbing the lists of top tackles in the league over the next coming season.
Yeah, and not only did Joe Alt come in and play well, but he was a left tackle all of his career. He got switched over to right tackle and played just as well. Like
Mhm.
he like you could tell it was a little bit of an adjustment for him, but like making that switch from left to right is not an easy thing to do, and he did a great job. But of course, the Chargers have another guy at left tackle that is also very deserving to be on this list, and that's Rashawn Slater. Just an absolute monster, has been that way ever since he was drafted with the Chargers. The Chargers have a really, really good offensive line that is making this team scary. And of course, that's the way Jim Harbaugh wanted it.
Yeah, that's exactly what Jim Harbaugh wanted, and he's doing a good job. Protect Justin Herbert. That's what we've all been saying for years now: is protect Justin Herbert. He'll be one of the best in the league.
And then give him a run game as
Moving
well.
into
Look out.
right, exactly. Moving into some of the skill positions at the tight end, we have what was again a rookie last year who ended up being the top tight end in the league, and that is Brock Bowers for the Vegas Raiders. And like this was an obvious one. Everybody knew he was going to be on here, I'm sure. You can't leave a guy like this off. He generational talent, put up amazing numbers as a rookie last year, led all tight ends in receiving yards, and I see no reason why that won't continue this season.
Yeah, Brock Bowers, every single record that a rookie tight end can have, Brock Bowers currently owns and possesses. So the other position that we have, this is our flex spot. We ended up giving it to Travis Kelce. While Travis Kelce is on the back foot of his career, he's still a threat. This is a guy that could easily go for 1,000 yards this year. Like he's still that capable of a player. And frankly, with this division's wide receivers, there wasn't a lot of star power. So it was kind of looking at it going like Travis Kelce, it feels like he is kind of the perfect slot for this spot.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. There's not a lot of star power at the wideout position in the AFC West. And so looking at the tight ends, yes, Travis Kelce had a bit of a down year last year. There was, injuries at the start of the year, a lot of off-field distractions, but it was kind of a one-off year for him. And so, with those distractions calming down, because there's not going to be quite as much hype over his relationship with Taylor Swift, I think we'll see him get back to form a little bit more. Likely later in the season. I think they're going to use him more sparingly this year just to preserve him for the playoffs. But I mean, Travis Kelce, one of the best that's ever done it.
Without a doubt.
Next up, we got wide receiver going back to the Chargers, and that's Lad McConkey, another young player who has come onto this league and just started to do phenomenal things. With Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert, he has quickly become a number one option, which I don't think many people were expecting out of Lad McConkey, but he is. He is sneaky good, and I just see him getting better and better as the years progress.
Yeah, I just remember going back to last year's draft when the Chargers passed on Malik Neighbors for Joe Alt. Chargers fans losing their mind. Chargers ended up trading up in the second round to draft Lad McConkey. And I think they're quite happy with Lad McConkey. I know they still wanted more wide receiver help, but they're probably pretty happy with that. The other wide receiver that we have is Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos. And I don't think he is a true number one receiver in this league. I think he's a really solid number two, but he's been just steady as a rock for that Denver Broncos team ever since arriving there. And yeah, Courtland Sutton.
Yeah, and I mean that really goes to show how weak the wide receiver position is in this division because Cortland Sutton was very easily for us the number one wide receiver in the division, which is crazy to think of when we talk about him being a more of a number two on most of the teams around the rest of the league. Moving to the running back position, this was a tough one because Ashton Genty got drafted to the Raiders, and we both really wanted to include him. But as we said at the start, like we just didn't want to do the rookies, and so ultimately it ends up being Najee Harris with the LA Chargers, who just signed a deal there after having, what was it, 6 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons with the Pittsburgh Steelers, which, as we've discussed, isn't as impressive as it was 2 decades ago, but it's still impressive in the way that it is very consistent. You know, that consistency is there, and I think Jim Harbaugh will find a way to utilize him in a very, very good way. And really, he was just the best running back option for the AFC West.
Yeah, we had other options. Isaiah Pacheco could have been the guy, but like some of the injuries and just the like there's it's the running back position, like actually the skill positions other than Brock Bowers and, for instance, Travis Kelce, this was really hard. I don't even think Najee Harris is the best running back on his team because they drafted Omarion Hampton in the first round this year, and you just go,
Yep.
yeah, that dude's probably going to get most of the workload. But again, we don't include rookies. Yeah, for when it's quarterback, do we even really need to say Patrick Mahomes' name and really give detail? Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. He's the best quarterback in this division that has 3 really good quarterbacks in this division, I might add, but no one comes close to Patty Mahomes. He's just simply the best.
Yep. Yeah, hands down. And, you know, as much as we like Justin Herbert, it's just you're not on the same level as Patrick Mahomes at this point.
Now moving over
Moving
to the defense.
down to
Now moving to the defense.
yeah, down to the defense here. We'll start with the edges. You know, a big sexy position in football right now. And how can you not start edge off again with the Raiders and Max Crosby, who, you know, we have been saying for the last couple of seasons really deserves to be more in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year and has been shafted repeatedly. Max Crosby is just too damn good at what he does. He is a beast, and he is the number one edge rusher in the AFC West.
Yeah, he 2 years ago he was rightfully robbed by Myles Garrett. Didn't have as good of a year this year, mostly due to injuries, but he's still that guy. The other edge rusher on this list is Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack, for a lot of his career, has been one of the very best edge rushers in the entire NFL. And, you know, didn't have as good of a year last year, but is still considered one of those guys that you can easily rely on and is still a threat every single time he's out there on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, and this was a tough one too because there are other good edge rushers in this division. It just Khalil Mack has been such a dominant force for over a decade now. You can't leave him off this list. Moving to the interior at the defensive tackle position, again, much like Max Crosby, it's Chris Jones with the Chiefs. He is one of the best, if not the number one defensive tackle in the league right now. He is just a game changer. And we see that week in, week out, year in, year out. He is the backbone of that Chiefs defense.
Yeah. The other interior defensive tackle that we have on this list was Christian Wilkins, coming over from Miami last offseason. Didn't actually get to play for the Raiders this year due to injury, but the actual thought of Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby playing side by side should be nothing but fear-inducing for any opposing team, because Christian Wilkins, when he's healthy, he's a top 5 defensive tackle in the game. He's one of the very, very best, and this defensive line for this AFC West team is nightmare fuel.
Yeah, 100%. Moving to the linebackers, we have the Denver Broncos making the list here purely because they poached a linebacker from the San Francisco 49ers, and that's Dre Greenlaw. He didn't play for the Broncos last year, but what he did in San Francisco last year, the year before, he is a phenomenal linebacker, and he is going to make this Broncos defense that much better, and that's landed him on our AFC West division linebacker.
Our other linebacker on this list is Nick Bolton of the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, looking at this division's linebackers, I think every single division, linebackers was kind of the toughest spot for us because there are some very clear, this guy is a great linebacker. And then you kind of just go into that middle ground, and Nick Bolton kind of fits that middle ground where he is a good linebacker by any stretch of the imagination, not top 10, but probably in that top 20 range, and he's been really solid for the Chiefs.
Yeah, we noticed that with some of these defensive positions where some divisions are just really stacked at a position, and other divisions it's really hard to even find a player that's worth it. And so it's really interesting to see where we've got to go with some of these. Moving to the secondary, our first cornerback spot is easily Pat Surtain with the Denver Broncos. He is the best cornerback in this division, one of the best in the league, and he's been that way for years. You know, I know there's skeptics out there. I agree because did he win Defensive Player of the Year?
This year.
Was it this year?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was really questionable to me. I don't think he should have been in that conversation, but it goes to show that he is a dominant force at that cornerback spot.
Yeah, an elite corner, one of the three. I think he's in that conversation of the three guys with Jalen Johnson and Sauce Gardner, and he just happened to have the best out of the three of those this year. But
Yeah.
yeah, very easy decision. Trent McDuffie is our other corner on this list. Pretty much ever since entering the league a couple of years ago, Trent McDuffie has just been slowly climbing up and becoming one of the best corners in football. I think you could arguably make a case for Trent McDuffie being a top 5 corner in the league right now as it is.
Mhm.
The Chiefs absolutely hit the nail on the head with that pick a few years ago. Again, like he's if you don't consider him top 5, he's probably top 7.
Yeah. Yeah, he's up there, and I mean the Chiefs struck gold with that pick when they grabbed him. The next one we have is a cornerback for this flex spot that we have on the defense, and that is the other cornerback for the Denver Broncos in Riley Moss. Um, he, it was tough at both the linebacker and the cornerback spots, but Riley Moss has really stepped up because when you've got a guy like Pat Surtain on the other side, you're going to see a lot more action, and he's been able to stand up to that and be a solid force to keep this defense in it. And so that is the reason he ended up making this list, just because he is a really good support factor to Pat Surtain.
Yeah, and he's going to be relegated to the third corner spot on this team with the Broncos drafting Jahad Barron in the first round this year. So that just kind of goes to show you kind of the level of corners in this division. You have two of the very best, but then it's a sharp drop off.
Yeah.
Now going to our safeties, and we're going to start out with the first one going back to the Chargers, and that's Derwin James. Derwin James, coming out of Florida State a handful of years ago, going to the Chargers, has just been a staple of being a really, really good safety. There's been a few years where people would consider him a top 5 safety in the NFL, but there's just been most of his career where he's just been top 10, where he's just been all in all a really good player. Has had a few injury-riddled seasons, but all in all is a guy that I think pretty much every team would love to have.
Yeah, Derwin James, one of the best, one of the most consistent. He's a great safety. I love watching him play. For the other safety that we've chosen here, it's another great defensive player that the Denver Broncos poached from the 49ers to make their defense better, and that is Talanoa Hufanga. He is just, he was lights out for the 49ers. You know, he was one of the best that they had, and they let him walk away for nothing, and he ends up going to the Denver Broncos, and this Broncos defense got significantly better with just those two additions that we talked about here, not to mention everything else. You know, they've got other players like Pat Surtain, Riley Moss. We mentioned they drafted a cornerback. This Broncos team, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people this season.
And then finally, we have our specialists on the roster. We are including punter and kicker. Like we said, we are not going to include long snapper. Yeah. And for our kicker, this was a fairly easy decision. Harrison Butker has just been an elite kicker for the Chiefs, and Whether you like him for his off-field antics or not, he is the best kicker in that division. Cameron Dicker, I know, is someone that is looking like he could potentially take that mantle away from him. But yeah, Harrison Butker is just simply the best.
Yeah, as it stands right now, he is the best. We could see that change. For the other special team spot, the punter, we're sticking with the Chiefs, and that's Matt Ariza. This is a tough one to choose, the punter, just because the teams that are worse tend to punt more often. But then you got to factor in how good these punters are at pinning the other teams deep, and Matt Ariza is one of the best.
There's a reason they call him the punt god.
Yeah.
Now moving over to the AFC South. Now, when we started talking about the AFC South, we had ourselves a good little chuckle because there were some very easy positions to go with here. But then there was also times where we were just scratching our head and going, oh my god, what the hell? And starting out with the offensive line and going with center, that is Tanner Bortolini of the Colts. That tells you how good the center position is in this division.
Right? Yeah, there's not much more to say about him than that. Sticking in the interior, we have at the guard position, Peter Skoronski with the Titans. A little bit more excitement there. Skoronski's done some great things, but still
Former top
not,
10 pick.
Right? It's still not something that, for myself, I write home about. Unfortunately, I don't know a lot about some of these O linemen that are outside of my team. I don't do a lot of deep dives. I know you do a little bit more research on players around the league than I do. So
yeah, with Peter Skoronski, he's one of those guys that he was a tackle at Northwestern and then was drafted to be a guard. And he's been fine as a guard, but like it's not necessarily been a situation of where he's been an elite guard at the NFL level. Not like our next guard on this list, where this is probably the easiest option of the entire offensive line. That's Quentin Nelson.
Yeah.
Highest guard drafted in the NFL, I think, since like the early 80s. Yeah, Quentin Nelson, the second that he stepped into the league, he was a top 5 guard in football. Pretty much immediately established that right away. And yeah, he's kind of had you haven't heard a lot about Quentin Nelson, but that's probably for very good reason, just because he's so goddamn consistent.
Yeah, well, and that is the thing you want out of an offensive lineman, is you don't want to be hearing a lot of things. You don't want to be hearing his name a lot, because that means he let somebody past it.
Yeah.
Quentin Nelson was easily the best offensive lineman, period, in the AFC South.
Oh, easily.
Next up at the tackle positions, we have Braden Smith with the Colts, another one that I
yeah,
like.
Braden Smith has been the model of consistency as a tackle. He's been one of those guys that you can look at and say any given year he could be in that range of top 15 to verging close to a top 10 tackle at his particular spot. But yeah, like he's been just one of those very solid tackles.
Mm-hmm.
The other tackle we have is the rookie from last year, J.C. Latham, who was drafted in the early stages of the first round for the Titans. Played quite well.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, the best tackle or the best offensive lineman that the Titans had last year.
Yeah, I mean, great pickup. This was a guy I was looking at a lot last year because I was hoping he was going to fall to my Pittsburgh Steelers, but did not. Great talent. Doing great things with the Titans, and it's something they need. I mean, they've had lackluster O-line and quarterback play. Having a great tackle is so key for them. Moving over to the skill positions for tight end, we have Dalton Schultz with the Houston Texans. He's been a great tight end for the last few seasons. I'm pretty sure he dealt with some injury issues last year, so we didn't see him quite as much. But I mean, that O-line has suffered in Houston, and so we're not seeing as much production out of these skill players. But really, Dalton Schultz is the best tight end that they've got in the AFC South.
Now, that could quickly change with the presence of Tyler Warren in Indianapolis, but again, not including rookies.
Hmm.
Our next player is we're going to have our flex spot, but this is also a wide receiver, and that's Michael Pittman Jr. of the Indianapolis Colts. I think people kind of forget about Pittman Jr. with how good he is, with just how bad the quarterback play has been in Indianapolis. And that's
Hmm.
unfortunately for him not going to change this year, because if it's not Anthony Richardson, it's Daniel Jones. And enough said. But yeah, Michael Pittman is a really, really talented wide receiver. I think he actually has the ability to be a number one receiver in the NFL. I just don't think he's had offenses that have been capable of getting him there.
Right, you just got to give this guy a quarterback already. I mean, we saw it a couple times last year when they had Joe Flacco in there. We saw some big things out of Michael Pittman Jr. So something they got to work on. Our next wide receiver on this list from the Jacksonville Jaguars had a phenomenal finish to his year last year. It was a bit of a slow start, pretty common with rookies, but that's Brian Thomas Jr. He was amazing come the end of the season last year. If he had been able to do that throughout the entirety of the season, I think he would have run away with the offensive rookie of the year last year, because it was just so good, the things he was able to do at the end of the year. And then being able to add another big name in Travis Hunter in this year's draft, it's some great weapons for Trevor Lawrence to have.
Yeah, and our final wide receiver is Nico Collins. He's, simply put it, the best receiver in this division. Him and CJ Stroud just have a really, really good, solid connection between each other. They know how to work with each other. He's going to have two young rookie wide receivers that he's going to be able to play off of this year. But yeah, Nico Collins is without a doubt your classic number one wide receiver. Is he a top number one wide receiver in this league? No, but he is without a doubt a number one wideout.
100%. Moving into the running back position, this was a tough one because there are a couple of good running backs in this division, but ultimately we landed on Jonathan Taylor with the Indianapolis Colts. He is just so much more explosive than the other options, such as Joe Mixon, and he can take over a game and win your team the game. Jonathan Taylor, he's that good. Whereas some of these other guys, they need that more support role around them.
Yeah, JT Plus is also just insanely fun to watch. And finally, we have CJ Stroud. I don't think this is much of a question here. It's going to be interesting to see how he plays this particular season. Granted, the quarterback play in this division isn't necessarily going to be held to high regard. Again, the only other quarterback that could potentially give him a running for this is Trevor Lawrence. But even then, CJ Stroud, even with a shaky offensive line, should still technically be better.
He definitely should, but yeah, this is going to be an interesting year for CJ Stroud. Last year, we already saw a bit of those pains with having a weaker O line, and that this O line just got even weaker, unless some of these rookies they drafted are magically really good. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, again, edge position. This was an easy one, and this position's dominated by one team, and that's the Houston Texans. First up, we have Will Anderson Jr., who was drafted a couple years ago, right after CJ Stroud. They went 2-3 with this, I believe, and they were like, Will Anderson Jr., you are the quarterback of our defense. And he has shown that. He has been a great edge rusher. I think there's more to come from him. We haven't seen everything from this guy yet because honestly, this team last year especially, they spent a lot of time with the defense on the field because the offense was struggling. Defense gets tired, you don't see the stats build up as much. Will Anderson Jr., I think we have a few future defensive player of the year at some point in his career.
Yeah, the Terminator is his nickname for a very good reason. The dude is an absolute machine. But the nickname for his teammate is the Werewolf, and that is Danielle Hunter. These two guys create what could potentially be the best edge rushing duo in the NFL. Like, it is just terrifying to think of what could potentially happen and trying to block these two guys. As someone who had to watch these two guys go up against my team week 2 of last season and seeing what they did to Caleb Williams, it was painful. And I envied it. I looked at that and went, I want that. And yeah, these two guys are, I don't think no one would consider them top 10, but both guys are very easily planted in top 15, if not top 10.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, if we're talking duos specifically, they could be one of the top 5 duos that are available in the league right now on the same team playing together.
Yes.
Moving to the interior at the defensive tackle position, first up we have DeForest Buckner with the Indianapolis Colts. One of the few bright spots for this Colts team on defense, really. DeForest Buckner, he's been a mainstay for them. He he holds down this defense, and he has to because the offense has been horrible.
Yeah, DeForest Buckner has just been a staple of a really, really good defensive tackle in the league, whether he was with San Francisco or whether he was with the Indianapolis Colts. But speaking of a former San Francisco defensive tackle, we have Eric Armstead of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this was a fairly interesting one because Armstead is a talented defensive tackle, but maybe not necessarily to the same level as DeForest Buckner was.
No, but this was a good veteran addition to this Jags defense that has struggled the last couple of years. So
Yes.
I like this addition for them. And, he is still one of the best D tackles in the league.
Yep.
Moving to the linebacker position, first up, again, with the Indianapolis Colts, we have Zaire Franklin. I didn't see a lot of him last year, so I don't have a lot for stats or anything on him, but really, this is one of those divisions where the linebacker position was very lacking. It was very difficult for us to pick, not because there was so much talent to choose from, but because there was so little talent to choose from.
Yeah, this was one of those positions where we kind of just ended up sitting here scratching our heads for probably a good 10 minutes going, this guy? Huh? Maybe?
Maybe?
The other linebacker that we have is Henry Tuatua, who is a decent young linebacker, but
Yeah.
he still has a lot of room to grow in this league, and we'll see what continues to happen. But this was, like what you were saying, one of those lacking of positions, to say the least.
100%. Moving into the secondary for the AFC South, this was a little less lacking. There is a lot of talent in the secondary for this division. And first up, we have yet another Houston Texan, and that is Derek Stingley Jr., who, if I'm not mistaken, was drafted the year before CJ Stroud, or was it the
Yes,
same year?
year before.
Yeah, this was the big guy that got the year before CJ Stroud and Will Anderson Jr. So really, it was a couple of really good drafts for the Texans before we got to this season, at least. And Derek Stingley Jr. has been a solid, I'd say top 10 cornerback, fringing and, battling in there just closer to 10 than 5 for the last couple of seasons. And I see no reason that he won't continue to grow in that position.
Yeah, Derek Stingley Jr. has been one of those guys that you could say could potentially be in that top 5 battle, just depending on who you ask. The other one, funny enough, we talked a lot about in the last division, the amount of Denver Broncos, or the amount of 49ers that the Denver Broncos stole. This is the Indianapolis Colts also going to that 49ers defense in Javarius Ward, taking him and bringing him into that defense that really basically needed every single position, and they got themselves a really, really talented corner to kind of be that leader.
Yeah, Travarius Ward was probably one of the top cornerbacks on the free agent market this year that teams were looking at, and he opted to go to the Indianapolis Colts, which is a team that has struggled on offense, but the defense has sort of held them in games. Great addition for the Colts. He's going to do some great things for them. I mean, I love this pickup for the Colts. I was kind of hoping he'd come to Pittsburgh instead, but it didn't end up going that way. I know a lot of teams wanted this guy, though. Next up was our flex position, and obviously, with no real great linebackers, we went cornerback again. And that was a former Kansas City Chief who is with the Titans now, and that's L'Jarius Sneed. I believe he joined them last year.
Yes.
Wasn't a great year for him, but he was probably one of the few bright spots on this Titans team because that was their defense was kind of all they had. Their offense was just a comedy of errors over and over again. And the
Literally.
defense had to do everything they could just to make them competitive. And L'Jarius Sneed, he was kind of the leader of this defense.
Yeah, L'Jarius Sneed was an easy decision to kind of have for our flex position because
Mhm.
even with the comedy of errors, he was still pretty decent last year. Not as good as when he was playing for the Chiefs the year prior to, but still quite good. The other, now moving into our safety position, the player that a lot of people hate, that is CJ Gardner Johnson of the Texans. Again, this is a guy that wherever he has been, he's caused nothing but mayhem for opponents, but he causes mayhem, but he's also still a pretty decent player.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, this is, this Texans defense, they probably have the best D in this division, and CJ Gardner Johnson is a great addition to that. The other safety we chose here was, again, with the Titans, surprisingly, but it's Xavier Woods. The safety spot wasn't quite as stacked as the cornerbacks, but Xavier Woods has been a solid mainstay safety who's been able to get it done everywhere he goes. And there's no reason to believe that he won't continue to help this Titans defense maybe stay in games. They've got great secondaries. They know they've got to contend with CJ Stroud, with Trevor Lawrence. So they know they have to make sure that the top is taken off of some of these receivers when you've got guys like Brian Thomas Jr., Nico Collins running deep routes. Xavier Woods was a great addition to that.
Now moving over to the specialist, for the kicker, Chaim Fairbairn was without a doubt probably the best option out of this group of guys. The Texans again have another player up on this list, and again showing why they are the best team in the division.
Yeah, and then moving to that punter position again, this is a tougher one. I don't think either of us really knew a lot of the punters that were available in the AFC South. And this division, it was bad last year. So all these punters got a lot of work. We went in and basically just looked at their stat lines and we're like, all right, Johnny Hecker with the Titans. You punted a lot and you did a fairly okay job at it.
So now moving over to the AFC East, which was better than the AFC South for sure, but there was some positions where you kind of looking at going like, huh, that isn't as good as others, but then there were some easy positions that were simple as can be. Starting out with our center position, that was Connor McGovern of the Buffalo Bills. This is a guy that has been classically put into that top 10 of center roles. I know some people are even looking at him potentially even being a top 5 center. I'm not quite there yet with him, but this was an easy one for us.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, great relationship he's got with Josh Allen. That they do great work together. Sticking to the interior at the guard position, first up we have Elijah Vera Tucker with the New York Jets. He's been probably one of the stronger parts of this Jets O line when it comes to keeping their quarterback upright, despite the fact that that doesn't happen very often. The quarterbacks in New York usually get beat up. We'll see what happens this year, though.
James Daniels coming over from the Steelers, going over to Pittsburgh, is now going to be the one of the best guards and one of the best O linemen for that Dolphins team. Again, James Daniels has always been a very consistent guard while he was with Chicago and with Pittsburgh. This is a nice little pickup for Miami.
Yeah, it was a disappointing loss for me with Pittsburgh, but he is going to do great things in Miami and maybe protect Tua Tagovailoa from himself. Moving to the tackle position, we have first up Spencer Brown with the Buffalo Bills. Again, this O line in Buffalo has been so key to Josh Allen's play. He likes to be a scrambler. He likes to get outside the pocket, and so you have to have really solid play. And Spencer Brown's been that.
Yeah, and then finally, our other tackle was a rookie from last year. That was Olu Fushanu with the Jets. Again, they added Armin Mumbu as well, giving them a really, really talented young tackle group for the Jets. But Fushanu, while he wasn't the elite tackle that most people would have thought he would have been last year, he was still quite good, quite serviceable, did the job needed, and he's only going to get better.
Yeah, great addition for the Jets. That honestly, this is a position they've been trying to rectify for years now, and maybe they're finally on the right path. Moving into the skill positions, first up at tight end, we have Dawson Knox with the Buffalo Bills, who has been a great tight end with Buffalo. It was actually tough because they have a couple of really good tight ends in Buffalo. Which one is it? Like who do we put here? But we ultimately landed with Dawson Knox. I expect to see a little bit more use out of the tight for Buffalo, but we'll see what happens.
Without a doubt, yeah. Dawson Knox, there was kind of that question mark of which tight end from Buffalo were we going to go. I know you and I had a little bit of debate on that one. But for our flex spot, going to wide receiver, Jalen Waddle. The wide receivers that are the top in this division are really, really good. And Waddle
Yeah.
being our flex position should just go to show how good the wide receivers are in this spot. Well, we have one of his teammates up on the list ahead of him.
Well, exactly, and that would be Tyreek Hill with the Dolphins at the other wide receiver spot. He is, he's the cheetah for a reason. He's one of the fastest guys in the league, and outside of last year having a bit of struggles, a bit of injury issues, he's been one of the best receivers in the league since he entered.
And then having Garrett Wilson also on this list again, this has been a guy that has just been super consistent. He is a true number one wideout. Unfortunately for him, we kind of talked about him and Michael Pittman kind of having that similar situation of where it's just been really bad quarterback play. Reunited with Justin Fields, who he had at college. So that should be an interesting little duo to see happen this year. But yeah, Garrett Wilson at the quarterback spot was kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if that chemistry reignites and the Jets can get something going on offense. Speaking of the Jets on offense at the running back position, it was tough to do this because there are, James Cook is a great running back with Buffalo, but he's not Breece Hall. Breece Hall is kind of like Christian McCaffrey 2.0 with what we've seen out of him. He's great out of the backfield. He's sharp with his cuts. He's got soft hands for catching it. Breece Hall on any other team in the league could be a top 5 running back, if not a top 3 running back. Unfortunately, he plays for the New York Jets.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with him the remaining part of this year. But yeah, Breece Hall is kind of like the mini Christian McCaffrey, and if he wasn't playing for the Jets, I'm sure his numbers would look a hell of a lot better throughout his career. But yeah, it's not going to be a terrible shock to hear at the quarterback position. It's Josh Allen.
Yeah.
He's one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL, and he's the former MVP of the league, or he's the reigning MVP of the league.
Yep.
Not much of a brainer here. No other quarterback in this division comes close.
Yeah, no, this was an easy one. I mean, especially considering rookie and the other one has been bouncing around from teams the last couple seasons in Justin Fields, and then you've got concussion syndrome Tua. So
you have the man who's trying to speed run death on a field.
Yeah, exactly. So moving over to the defensive side of the ball, at edge position, we have first up from the New York Jets, Will McDonald, who, again, a great edge rusher. He has done some phenomenal things. He's a force on that edge. If they could find him a solid partner, this defense would be so much better. Not that he doesn't have a good partner, he just doesn't have elite.
Yeah. Like Will McDonald coming into the league was a little bit slow, but has just progressively gotten better and better and better each season. He's been a force. Harold Landry coming over from the Titans, now with the Patriots, again going into that system that he knows oh so mightily well, going back with his former head coach, now reuniting in New England. But yeah, this was kind of the edge rushers where we were looking at this division. There was no real elite superstar, but this Harold Landry was probably the second best.
Yeah, definitely. Moving to the interior at defensive tackle, first up, again, back to the New York Jets, we have Quinnen Williams, who is one of the premier defensive tackles in the league and really is the linchpin of this Jets defense. It all starts with him and moves out from there.
Yeah, he has been such a force ever since entering the league from Bama. Funny enough, we talked about going back to the going back to the Jets. We're going right back to the Patriots. This was a free agent signing this offseason in Milton Williams coming over from the Eagles, where he had an outstanding playoffs that made him a lot of money this offseason, and he realistically was the second best option there from the interior defensive line.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a theme with the Pats. This is a defense in a division that would have been dominated by the New York Jets if not for all the signings that the New England Patriots made this year. And next up on that list at the linebacker, it is a backer that you and I both really enjoy watching. We liked watching him with the Raiders. I loved watching him with the Steelers, and that's Robert Spillane at linebacker with the New England Patriots.
Yeah, Robert Spillane, he's just one of those guys that he's not flashy, but he's just consistent day in, day out, and is just a really, really solid guy. Matt Milano is our other linebacker on this list. Dude is just spectacular. He's probably the best linebacker on this division.
Mm-hmm.
And playing for the Bills last year, he was really, really good.
And I mean, he's really the best defensive player that the Bills have as well.
True.
You know, he without him, Josh Allen would be having to put up numbers similar to Joe Burrow's just to win games. Next up, moving to the secondary, because the linebackers were a little bit weak, so we weren't able to find a third there. Cornerback, however, a lot of good cornerbacks in this division. First up is one that the Patriots drafted just last year, and that's Christian Gonzalez. He has not lived quite up to expectations yet, but he was kind of the only bright spot on that defense last year before now bringing in a defensive-minded head coach who has overhauled this, given him a lot of support. I think we're going to see Christian Gonzalez take a huge leap this season.
Yeah, Christian Gonzalez going into his third year this year. His rookie year was hurt for most of it, and last year showed that he has the capabilities of being a true number one corner in this league. He is really phenomenal, and he's only going to get better under Mike Vrabel. But yeah, taking a look at our other is Carlton Davis going over from the Lions to the Patriots. That gives them an elite 1-2 duo in this division, man. Like that is absolutely huge.
Yeah, the Patriots, they grabbed a positional player at every level of defense this year that just made this team so much better. That it's going to be interesting to see what the Pats can do. For our flex position, we chose a cornerback, and I know it is wild to have this guy in a flex spot instead of one of the mainstays, but he had a really bad year last season. Great every other year. Last year was down, and that's Sauce Gardner. You can't leave him off this list, though. He is just too damn good with the New York Jets, Sauce Gardner. I expect to see him bounce back this season. If he doesn't, we might have to have a discussion about removing him from this list, but as it stands, he's still one of the best in the league. As you mentioned earlier, him, Pat Surtain, and Jalen Johnson are really the top three in the league right now.
Yeah, when it came to Sauce Gardner, just with how bad this year was, it was shockingly bad. Where you're just like, man, like he just looks lost out there. It looks like he doesn't know what he's doing, and we kind of contributed that to the Aaron Rodgers syndrome of just kind of everything was bad with the Jets last year. But yeah, if he has a similar year to last year, or he doesn't improve his play, we could be talking about Sauce Gardner no longer being an elite corner. But talking about a new player, which we had to make some additions to this morning when we were changing this, that is Minkah Fitzpatrick from the safety position. Again, he was on the AFC North part of this, but ends up getting slid over to the AFC East. Minkah Fitzpatrick is one of the best safeties, like just how we talked about with Derwin James. Minkah Fitzpatrick is in that exact same category.
Yeah, 100%. And you know how much I love this guy. He spent his rookie year with Miami, who drafted him in the first round, traded him to Pittsburgh. He had a phenomenal career up to this point there, and now he's been traded back to Miami. And so if he plays there, he's likely going to be the best safety in the AFC East.
Without a doubt.
Last on the defensive side is back to the New York Jets, and that is Tony Adams at the safety position. You know, he has been consistent, exactly. Like this Jets defense, they had a down year last year overall. When Sauce Gardner is underperforming, everybody else is going to underperform as well. So really, the safety position wasn't greatly stacked until Minkah Fitzpatrick came over here. We had to sort of flip a coin to see who stayed in this spot, and Tony Adams won that spot.
Moving over to our specialist. For our kicker, we have Tyler Bass. Again, this was kind of one of those divisions where it really didn't feel like there was a clear cut guy, but Tyler Bass definitely kind of led the way in a lot of these discussions because, again, kicking Buffalo is not an easy feat, and he has been kind of the better kicker, one of the better kickers that Buffalo has had over the last few years.
Yeah, 100%. And then for the punter, we have with the Miami Dolphins, Ryan Stonehouse. Again, this was a team that struggled a lot on offense last year, so he was having to punt a lot. And much like the New England Patriots punter, he was punting a lot, but Stonehouse just did a better job at field position and winning that position battle.
Now taking a look at the AFC North, which this was like the NFC North, the division that we were very quickly able to run through as fast as humanly possible, mainly because this is a division you and I know quite well. And so it was
Yeah.
easy to rattle off players. And starting out with our center position, this was a no-brainer. It was Tyler Lindenbaum. If we talked about Creed Humphrey being the best center, Tyler Lindenbaum is probably second or third, depending on who you ask.
Yeah, this was an easy one for sure. And this division overall was easy but hard. We all rattled it off quick, but there was a lot of debate because you guys know me, Steelers fan. So I was making a case for every single position, basically going, well, what about Steelers guy? Um, Moving into the guard position though, we have a Cleveland Brown, and that is Joel Bitonio, who is year in, year out, one of the best guards in the league. And he's playing on a terrible team and still gets great things done. And so you could not leave Joel Bitonio off this list.
This was probably the only other guard position. Like, this is probably the only position on the O line that we kind of look at as maybe a little bit of a weakness in Isaac Samalu. Hopefully I said that right. But yeah, he's a perfectly capable guard, but
Yep.
not necessarily elite like some of the other offensive linemen that we are talking about on this list.
Yeah, and I mean Pittsburgh had to make a choice between keeping Isaac Suomalo or James Daniels, and they let James Daniels walk so they could keep Suomalo. So that they felt he was the better of the two, and that's where that stands. At the tackle position, first up we have with the Cincinnati Bengals, Orlando Brown Jr. They went out a couple years ago and spent big to bring Orlando Brown Jr. in because they saw how much Joe Burrow was getting hit, and they said, no, we cannot have this. And since coming in, Joe Burrow has been better protected.
Yeah, Orlando Brown Jr. has kind of bounced around the league a little bit, going from Baltimore to Cleveland or to KC, and then eventually signing with the Bengals. But our other offensive lineman there, it's Ronnie Stanley, one of the very best offensive linemen in the entire NFL. Like, this was a no-brainer.
Yeah, and I mean this Ravens team, we've seen that they need that strong offensive line, especially guys who can run block because they run a lot out of every position in that backfield. Moving into the skill positions, this was a tough one at tight end because we do have some skilled, talented guys, but you have a veteran that has been so consistent his entire career in Mark Andrews with more Ravens. Much like Travis Kelce, how can you leave him off this list? And so Mark Andrews is easily the best tight end in this division.
And even just speaking about Mark Andrews, even with him not starting the year because he was still coming back from injury, and even like the slow first couple weeks that he had, he still damn near had almost 1,000 receiving yards. Like, he was still an elite tight end this year. For our flex spot, this is one of the ones that you and I had a lot of debate on. You thought it should have been Pat Freiermuth. I ultimately leaned towards Zay Flowers. He's without a doubt been the best receiving weapon that the Ravens have had these last couple years, and he's starting to show that he can kind of be one of those elite. I'm not quite ready to say he's a number one receiver in this league, but he is without a doubt an elite number two.
Yeah, we'll see if he can keep building up. And it wasn't just Pat Freiermuth. I was also arguing for DK Metcalf being here after that trade came through because, I mean, that is a bona fide number one receiver. So But ultimately, we landed on Zay Flowers just due to the youth and the versatility, the different styles of play. And so that's where Zay Flowers came in. For the solid wide receiver positions, this should be no shock to anybody. First up on the list is T. Higgins for the Cincinnati Bengals, which should tell everybody who the other wide receiver is.
Jamar Chase. Enough
Easily.
said.
Yeah, the Cincinnati Bengals are stacked at wide receiver. That's where they've spent all their money on those two wide receivers and their quarterback. That is why they have to put up 50 points a game to win, because their defense is horrendous. Running back, this was another one that was really pretty easy. If Nick Chubb hadn't gotten the injuries he's got the last couple of years, I think we could have had an argument over it. But after the signing last year, and then
Nick Chubb's also not even with the AFC North anymore. He's with the Texans.
No, he's not. He's not.
Yeah.
But that's what I think if he had been playing and not hurt, he would still be with the Browns. He wouldn't have gone anywhere.
No, totally.
But running back is Derrick Henry, the king. Obviously, he is one of the best in the league. Has been for a decade, and will probably continue to do so. I know we've expressed, myself especially, about a month and a half ago, seeing all the extra weight he put on. I'm concerned about whether his knees will be able to hold up to that. We'll see what happens. But at this point, I mean, Derrick Henry is one of the best.
For our quarterback, it's Joe Burrow. It's not even a conversation. I know some people would say Lamar Jackson. I just don't think Lamar Jackson does what Joe Burrow does. I've been pounding the table saying that Joe Burrow is the second best quarterback in the NFL. I think it's a bigger gap than two, or from 1 to 2 to 2 to 3. And that's our offense for the AFC North.
Yeah, and I mean, I mostly agree with Joe Burrow. I would actually say the gap from 1 to 2 is smaller than the gap from 2 to 3. Like, I think Joe Burrow is
that's what I was saying.
Fields to be the best.
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you said it the other way.
Yeah, I might have said it the other way around.
Yeah, either way.
So, yeah.
Going to the defense, again, this was easy but hard, and this is a list that is dominated, which should not shock anybody, by basically two teams. There's a couple of guys from one other team, and that is the Cleveland Browns with edge rusher Myles Garrett, because you cannot leave Myles Garrett off this list. As much as I rant and bitch about him because he's always talked about and compared to TJ Watt, and people say he's better, he's not, but he is still one of the best edge rushers in the league.
Surprised no one. We also have TJ Watt on this list.
As you have to.
Yeah, like when you talk about edge rushers in the NFL right now in the league, it's Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. Just depending on which coin you are on, it's those are the guys that are like the staple of this league. And it's kind of insane that we left off the sack leader from back-to-back years off this list. That's just how good Myles Garrett and TJ Watt are.
Well, exactly. Like, we left off a few guys off this list because no Trey Hendrickson. Alex Highsmith has been a lights-out edge rusher as well the last couple of seasons. And so it just goes to show how stacked the defenses are in the AFC North.
It's
moving
insane.
It's nuts. At the defensive tackle position, we have, much like we did with Mark Andrews on the offense, Cameron Hayward. He is ageless, it seems. He's pushing 40 almost, and he's still one of the best defensive tackles week in and week out when he can stay healthy. That's the tough thing. He's at that age now where he battles with some injuries, but when he's on the field, he's a game changer.
And plus, last year he was probably one of his best years in a long time.
Right? And that was at age 35.
Yeah. Our other defensive tackle is formerly Justin Matabuka. Nadim, I'm pretty sure that's how you say his first name now. But yeah, with the Ravens, he is an absolute threat. This is one of those guys I'm not willing to say is quite top 5 defensive tackle, but he's just on that outside. If you were to say top 7, you'd probably slot him in at 7 or 6. Like he's one of those guys that is just really, really all around phenomenal.
He is. And sticking with the Baltimore Ravens, going to the linebacker position, Roquan Smith, former Bears linebacker who would have been one of the best in the NFC North if he was still there. and is the best interior linebacker in the AFC North, hands down.
Yeah, Roquan Smith is. We've often talked about like one of three for the corner positions. Roquan Smith is one of those guys for the linebacker spot.
Yeah.
Funny enough, his former playmate and teammate is Patrick Sween, who ultimately jumped ship last year to join the Steelers. And we talked about the Steelers never spending money on free agents, and they did so on Patrick Queen, which was their biggest position of need last year. And so
Yep.
it was kind of a little bit shocking for us to see, but ultimately it was a really solid move for him.
It was. And stat wise, he had a bit of a down year. He's that, but the key thing was Pittsburgh had a linebacker that didn't get a career-ending injury.
Yes.
The
That
curse
was
maybe
huge.
has been broken. Maybe. Moving into the secondary, at the cornerback position, first up, Cleveland Browns. They managed to get somebody else on this list. Denzel Ward. He is a great corner, and it should be no surprise to anybody. You have to have a great corner in this division because you've got Joe Burrow throwing the ball to Jamar Chase. You need somebody that can somehow put a little bit of pressure on them.
Yeah, our next corner up on this list is the young Joey Porter Jr. for the Steelers. This is a guy that I've kind of almost seen a little bit of Jalen Johnson in him, where he started out where people are like, this kid has a lot of talent, and he's just been getting better and better and better, and is a little bit shut down. I don't think he's quite on that same trajectory as a Jalen Johnson was, but like he is without a doubt the number one corner for the Steelers and has been a really, really good addition. And the fact that
Oh
they
yeah,
got him
and
in
I
the
mean
second round
he's
was
right. He's done a lot of good shutdown. I mean, one of the only guys he has not been able to defend, the Steelers went and made him his teammate instead, and that's DK Metcalf. DK
yeah.
Metcalf's one of the only wide receivers that's been able to burn Joey Porter Jr. Now he's a teammate. We don't have to worry about that. Next up on this list, again at the flex, we went with the cornerback. This is one that we were talking if there were any changes. I almost wonder if we should have made a change here because what we have right now is Pittsburgh Steelers cornerback Darius Slay, who they signed in the offseason. But we just discussed earlier about a trade, and so the question comes: is Darius Slay better or is um
Jalen Ramsey.
Jalen Ramsey better?
Yeah, I think for us, probably slot in Jalen Ramsey at this spot. Again, that I think we kind of ultimately forgot about that one because we were changing a few others from both
Yep.
sides. But yeah, I do think Jalen Ramsey in this one ahead of Darius Slay for sure.
Yeah.
Taking a look here at the safeties, and obviously we had a really easy set of safeties. Well, we still have one in Kyle Hamilton, who is probably the best safety currently in the NFL as it stands. We had Minkah Fitzpatrick at the second spot, but then we had to change it because the Steelers had to go and trade him away to Miami.
Right? And yeah, hands down, Kyle Hamilton is the number one safety in the league right now. He flies around everywhere. Like he is Troy Polamalu-esque. I compare all safeties to that man because he is one of the best, if not the best, to ever play that position. But at this other safety position, we then had to sit back and go, okay, well, is it the Steelers number 2? We know the Bengals don't have anything. And so, hey, look at that. The Browns got themselves another player on the defense here, and that's Grant Delpit. And that's purely because they need somebody over the top for when Denzel Ward doesn't manage to cover Jamar Chase effectively.
Yeah, Grant Delpit is also a younger safety who is
Yeah.
developing a little bit more. Like, he's not elite by any stretch, but he's also not a liability. Excuse me. Taking a look at our special teamers and kicker, probably the easiest decision from a kicker that we've had to do so far. Chris Boswell. He was the best kicker in the league last year.
Easily. The Wizard of Oz. He's been one of the most consistent kickers in the league over the last 5. It was always Justin Tucker, but Chris Boswell has been right there behind him. And as soon as Tucker started to waver a little bit last year, Boswell was like, yeah, this is why I say I'm the best. And he is. I maintain that. And then punting, this was one where we went back and forth a little bit. Ultimately, we didn't get to see a lot of this guy last year because he got hurt very early on a bad injury. But the Steelers brought him in because he is one of the best punters in the league, and that's Cameron Johnston. He's been one of the best for several years. We didn't get to see him last year because of that leg injury he took, but I still think he's likely one of the best. There wasn't a lot of really good options at punter throughout the rest of this division. So
Yeah, Cameron Johnson was the easier pick here, but
he's one of the best coffin corner punters.
Yeah, he's a really solid player. But that is it for this podcast here today, guys. Thank you all very much for watching. We will be doing the AFC North, or the AFC portion of this next week, so stay tuned for that. But for Sterling, I'm Brendan saying thank you all very much for watching. Peace.